I want to welcome everyone. We're going to start off our meeting with a call to order and a roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Dr. Beebe? Here. Dr. Beebe is present. Ms. Bofi? Here. Ms. Bofi is present. Ms. Bradford? Ms. Bradford is present. Mr. Garvey? Mr. Gio?
Present.
Mr. Gio is present. Ms. Hill?
Present.
Ms. Hill is present. Mr. Lee?
Here.
Mr. Lee is present. Dr. Moranti?
Present.
Dr. Moranti is present. Ms. Orange Jones? Present. Ms. Orange Jones is present. Mr. Romer?
Here.
Mr. Romer is present. Mr. Wagasback? Here. Mr. Wagasback is present. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much, members, for being here, and thank you for those in the audience. We always appreciate you being here. We want to start off the day with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation will be given by Ike Hallbaugh from Calcasieu, who's brave enough to attend meetings back-to-back days, and I appreciate that. And his wife will be given the Pledge of Allegiance, Arlene.
Heavenly Father, we pray that you will give us your gift of knowledge, that we might always make the best decisions for the good of all the school children in Louisiana. We pray that you give us the wisdom to know and define our tasks, the strength to build and refine our educational goals, and the courage to persevere as necessary. We ask for your direction that we might make unselfish decisions for those we serve. We pray that all who are assembled here have a safe journey home. We thank you for all your past and present blessings. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Arlene Hallbaugh is a career educator from Calcasieu, and we appreciate the work you've done and you taking time to be here and give us good input. So thank you very much. I'd like to move next to the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any objection to the approval? Hearing none, agenda is approved. Approval of the minutes from June 19th, 2013.
So moved. Second.
Any amendments that anyone needed to be recognized? Yes.
Mr. Romer.
On the minutes.
No, not on the minutes.
Okay.
But I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. So hearing no objection to the minutes are approved. We will do a few things this morning. We're going to hear first the report from the state superintendent. Then we will hear from our lieutenant governor on an exciting program that his office is leading. Then we have a couple of moments of personal privilege that we're going to recognize. But before I do that, I want to, Ms. Beebe, you have a question?
Yes, sir. I don't see a copy of an emergency agenda. Is that going to be presented later? Or I'd made a request for an emergency agenda item to be placed dealing with a discussion of Common Core and In Bloom.
I don't.
Per our conversation on Monday, Ms. Beebe, you said you'd be happy to have the superintendent also address those in his remarks today. And that
Ms.
request.
Heather, please don't take me there. You know, I came with a positive attitude this morning. I put the request in writing. I don't want to repeat performance. I asked for a discussion, first of all, an emergency agenda item. And in that agenda item, I wanted a discussion of Common Core and In Bloom, and as part of the retreat discussion, I gave the rationale.
And then as part of our conversation, Dr. Beebe.
Who did you converse with?
We were conversing as a group. You were conversing with Mr. Romer and other board members, and they asked if instead if the superintendent could address that in his remarks today.
Well,
and you said
the
yes.
question was not directed to me. It was my item. I followed proper protocol, and so I didn't agree to that. So I would ask Mr. Romer that we have an item, an emergency agenda item. I fulfilled the timeline, and I want the agenda item as requested, sir.
Dr. Beebe, just,
misunderstood.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Mr. President, thank you. If it would help you, I'm happy to slightly adjust my comments and to make my report and thus our dialogue this morning about that subject I'll defer to you, of course, but if that's helpful, I'd be happy to make what's about to happen all about that, if that's of interest.
I requested it as out of courtesy to constituents who asked that it be placed on the agenda. They also want to be afforded the opportunity to communicate their concerns. And again, I'm going to be very candid. I think this is a way to circumvent public participation. And I'm trying to be very professional. But again, the request was made, and I don't know, I guess I'm going to, in the future, I will send email requests. I'll send it to media outlets throughout the state so that I can be treated with the respect as an elected member of this body.
We can, first of all, Ms. Boffey?
Bofi?
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Ms. Beebe, Dr. Beebe, I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I'd like to make a motion that we address the items that Dr. Beebe is bringing up and would like to address, and by making that motion, that would give us the opportunity to have public comment. Second.
Thank you, Ms.
And I don't think there's any objection.
There is protocol. Per state law, we have to follow the protocol.
Okay, well, tell me what the protocol is. Thank you. Well, can we add, within 24 hours, we can have a unanimous vote to create an emergency agenda.
Well, we just need to amend the agenda, and so here's what you just need to say.
All right. So we'll amend the agenda. The administration indicates that the staff indicates that there's been a request from a board member for an item to be added to the agenda.
We will add a discussion of Common Core and In Bloom. Dr. Beebe, is that correct?
Yes.
Consideration of discussion.
We will take public comment. All this in relation to RS 42, Section 19. Public comments will be received and asked for. And we have to do a roll call vote to make sure there's no objection to such a motion. Assuming it'll be unanimous approval, which I anticipate, the item will be added and a discussion and public comment taken. Roll call quickly, please.
Yes, sir. And who seconded the motion? I did not hear the second.
Ms. Orange Jones?
Orange Jones. Okay, thank you. The motion is to amend the agenda to include a discussion on Common Core and In Bloom. Dr. Beebe?
Yes.
Dr. Beebe votes yes. Ms. Bofi?
Yes.
Ms. Bofi votes yes. Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Ms. Bradford votes yes. Mr. Garvey? Mr. Garvey is absent. Mr. Guillo?
Yes.
Mr. Guillo votes yes. Ms. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Hill votes yes. Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Lee votes yes. Dr. Moranti?
Yes.
Dr. Moranti votes yes. Ms. Orange Jones? Ms. Orange Jones is absent. Mr. Wegesbach?
Yes.
Mr. Wegesbach votes yes. Mr. Romer, do you care to vote?
I'll vote yes.
Mr. Romer votes yes. The motion has
Thank you.
passed.
So we will go ahead and take the it'll be last in the agenda today, but we'll take it at that point. But we'll start now with the superintendent's comments. Superintendent White.
Thank you, Mr. President. If it's okay with you, Mr. President, I still might make some of my comments having to do with the topics that Dr. Beebe raised. Fantastic. I want to just continue to update the board on the process of adopting new basic expectations for students in all grades in reading, writing, and mathematics. As you know, because our students often lag students across the country with whom they will have to compete for jobs in the future, this board determined 3 years ago to raise basic expectations in reading, writing, and math to be on a level playing field with students from across the country. And at the same time, the board's guidance to us has been, as this board has done historically, that we are going to gradually phase in the accountabilities associated with those expectations rather than risking humiliating or denigrating educators, schools, and certainly rather than risking hurting students as we do it. I wanted to update you on this 5-year transition process that started in 2010 and will run through 2015 so that you have a sense of it. I know that increasingly it's being discussed publicly, and to answer questions and concerns and have a discussion about it. As I said, this process started in 2010 when this board adopted these new standards, these new expectations in reading, writing, and math. In 2011, the state created a transition plan so that schools and educators could be guided in this process over the course of the 5 years. In 2012, in this specific board's first term, you began passing policy to guide us through this transition, including an accountability system that would ensure that schools are kept stable and on a level playing field so that they're not unfairly punished as we raise the bar. Members, this year's letter grades have not yet been released, but the list of F-rated schools has been released, and the list of F-rated schools is down, which I think is a good thing. There were concerns, I know, from some expressed during the legislative session. Mr. President, you were in attendance at some of these sessions, that the number of F-rated schools would skyrocket because the tests were slightly more difficult last year. That, in fact, didn't happen. The number of F-rated schools is down this year. And I think, members, that is a harbinger of good things to come. I think we will see actually an increase in the overall performance of schools on scores this year, which should happen. We saw an increase in graduation rates. We saw an increase in ACT. We saw an increase in the literacy rates of students this year as well. So we should see an increase. This year's assessments, meaning the 2014 tests, will be more difficult than last year's assessments. And we have been working with educators, including 2,000 teacher leaders, at a minimum one per school, with superintendents, and the majority of superintendents have attended collaborative meetings. We have moved toward a classroom support toolbox that provides every teacher in the state with tools to plan toward these new expectations. And this year's assessments will be more difficult. At the same time, you will be considering policy to ensure that we do not humiliate, we do not denigrate, we do not hurt educators, students, or schools in this process. And we will be bringing to you in December elementary and middle school policy around promotion and around educator accountability. And then in January, policy around graduation requirements and around educator accountability, where we will be asking you to ensure that we keep schools on a level playing field, we keep them stable, we honor them for their past work, we don't denigrate or try to humiliate schools in the process, and instead we try to keep schools relatively constant as we go through this transition process. That means not lowering for reasons of punishment school letter grades. It means not being overly harsh on teacher evaluation. And it means not hurting kids in the promotion process just because they used to have been taught to a lower standard. And those will be the policies that we'll be asking you to consider in December and in January. In the 2014-15 school year, as you know, our assessments of literacy, meaning reading and writing, and math will be the same assessments that states around the country will take. And we'll have, I think, an incredible opportunity, not just to be able to look at the ACT, but to be able to look all the way down to third grade to see how our kids are stacking up. Our educators will have an incredible opportunity to see very detailed reports about the skills that we're teaching in Louisiana as opposed to the skills that are being taught in Minnesota or the skills that are being taught in Arizona or anywhere else in America, so that we as a board can ongoing adjust our policy to make sure that over time we gradually raise our standards so that ultimately our kids truly will be on a level playing field. And members, I would just leave you with this idea. I don't think those ideas are in conflict with one another. That on one hand you can raise the bar for kids, and on the other hand you as a board can continue to gradually raise the bar. Not an immediate raising of the bar that drops kids and teachers off a cliff, but instead a gradual raising of the bar. Louisiana is known nationally as a leader in accountability at the school level, at the educator level, and at the student level. That has been because we've ensured the faith of people in our state that when we take that approach of having high standards, we don't do it in a way that humiliates or denigrates the hardworking educators, certainly the kids, as well as our school superintendents and school leaders. I'm going to ask you to continue to take that approach so that we maintain our status as leaders and so that we do the right thing for our kids in this moment of great opportunity. I want to thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity to present this report, and I'm happy to take questions or comments from the board.
Does any member have a question or comment at this moment? Ms. Bophy.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you, Superintendent White, for thinking about how we can get the level of instruction where it needs to be as quickly as possible, but also while thinking about how we can handle the new assessments that we anticipate will be harder. And I think that based on the way that Louisiana has acted in the past, that I think our educators are used to that. If you look at the school performance scores and how the bar was raised over time from previous boards, I also think that speaks to the reason why we have fewer F-rated schools, is that over time, as the expectations have been raised, our educators have been able to rise to the challenge, and I think that that's a fair way to do it. So I appreciate you taking this approach and look forward to working on that policy.
Thank you.
Any other members? I'll thank you, Superintendent, for your report. I will say, again, I appreciate you bringing to our attention early things that we're going to need to contemplate over the next 3 to 12 months, which you've done consistently now, and that's something that we've been working on as a board so that we can have more input and guidance, and I appreciate you once again bringing to us early things that we're going to need to contemplate in December in particular. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Lee.
We've all known for years that Louisiana does not measure up to the rest of the nation academically. So we know that it's been time to do something. I appreciate your report indicating that while we need to move the bar up and we need to be able to compete academically with the rest of the nation, we need to do it in a way that does not degrade teachers or schools or parents, which to me really is saying we're going to have to give more effort to those who need help the most. So it's going to take a transition time, and I appreciate you recognizing that.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Ms. Beebe.
Thank
Or
you,
Dr.
Mr.
Beebe,
Ron.
I'm sorry.
I want to go on record as thanking the educators throughout Louisiana. They have gone through, with regard to the education reform initiatives, they, while there could be many distractions, they have maintained the focus, and I'm proud to say that many are hardworking individuals, and that we are, just by Mr. White, you're acknowledging the fact that we have reduced the number of F schools in Louisiana. I mean, these individuals are dedicated and they're committed to improving student outcomes. So I think every opportunity that we have, we need to acknowledge their hard work and their effort to make the gains that we need here in Louisiana.
I will concur. I appreciate that.
Agreed.
And I'll add this to last comment, and then we'll move on to Lieutenant Governor, who's been patient. You know, there was a concern about us doing the ACT as we did this year. And I think it ought to be noted that our students did well. Now, we want them to do better. But as a whole, they did better than we expected. And I expect they'll rise to the challenge. Our educators will rise to the challenge, and our leadership will rise to the challenge, and our students will rise to the challenge. That's the point of raising the bar. And we inevitably find out that when we raise the bar, people meet it. And so I know we all were pleased to see that we performed better on the ACT than expected for the first time. We had thousands of kids who would have, or children I should say, students who would not have taken the ACT, who took it, and not only did they take it, many of them performed quite well and actually qualified for four-year college, which they might not have otherwise even considered. So yes, raising the bar is important, and I appreciate your approach. I appreciate everybody's comments, and I appreciate your report for today. That being said, I would like to invite the Lieutenant Governor and any that he may wish to bring with him. Lieutenant Governor is going to make a presentation on a very exciting education resource that he's working on. I want to thank you, Lieutenant Governor Darden, for being here. As one that has been traveling the state quite a bit, I appreciate the work your office is doing with our parks and with our cultural and tourism in this state. I know your budget has been a challenge, but I've seen improvement in the quality of service. So I really appreciate those things, and I appreciate you being here today. And I will give you the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members. It's a pleasure to be here and take just a very few moments of your time. This is the third time I've sat before you in my capacity as a statewide official, presenting a program to you and asking for your endorsement. And it's my first time, though, I believe, with the board as presently constituted. So I'm pleased to be here and to see all of you. Thank you for the opportunity. Initially, you approved a character education curriculum patterned on the life of Eddie Robinson several years ago, and you also approved a bicentennial curriculum that was celebrated throughout 2012 across the state, and this is the third such program that we've initiated in our office, primarily because what we do in the Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism includes so many of the great assets of Louisiana that provide an educational opportunity for our young people in a way that creates fun and interesting and exciting and creative curricula that can be followed. And the presentation I want to make to you today is about really, I think, a vastly underappreciated but vast area of our state dealing with the Atchafalaya Basin. The Atchafalaya National Heritage Area was established in 2006, and it stretches across 14 parishes in south central Louisiana. It contains the nation's largest river basin delta with bayous and cypress swamps and marshes. The basin provides an outstanding habitat for 24 federal and state listed threatened or endangered species, including Louisiana black bear, the brown pelican, and bald eagles. And much of this land remains a wilderness. The Atchafalaya National Heritage Area is an isolated situation for those who live in the interior of the basin that enables the cultures of Native Americans, Acadians, French, African Americans who live in this basin and pass from generation to generation the cultures that represent their various backgrounds. The languages, the music traditions, the culinary arts, the handcrafts, and the lifestyle are unique today. And unlike any other place in America, there's a story around every bend in the river and every corner of this ever-changing landscape. And our objective was to take advantage of that and to create an educational opportunity for young people to appreciate that this was literally in their backyards here in Louisiana. It's a place where you can still get lost. Its vastness is difficult to imagine. Its pathways blend with the watercourses, making it sometimes difficult to retrace your route. With that in mind, the Atchafalaya National Heritage Area has a series of goals. They operate within our office. And I'll pause right now and introduce to you the folks who are here in our office, because I want you to know who's behind the educational initiatives that have been created. Richard Hartley is our Director of Special Projects in the office, and he really focuses on education. As many of you know, he's a former school superintendent, a former principal who has a real passion for education. He directs a lot of our educational initiatives. Also with us today is Dee Scallon, who is a wonderful artist and storyteller and writer who has joined us to assist in our museum efforts and our educational efforts. Deborah Credur is the director of the Atchafalaya Heritage Program. Julie Wiesno is also here, who coordinated our bicentennial program, and will be coming back to you in a year or so as we anticipate the commemoration of the Battle of New Orleans, one of the most significant battles in the history of America that shaped the destiny of America's future, and we'll have a program designed around that as well. Kathy Berry, who is Chief of Staff in our office, and last but not least, seated next to me, Memory Seymour, who is probably one of the best, if not the best, curriculum writer in the state of Louisiana. And we're delighted to have her on our staff with a focus on trying to figure out how we can take the resources in our office and meld them into an educational opportunity for young people. And she's responsible for putting this program together. The Atchafalaya National Heritage Area goals are to maintain interpretive sites, increase public awareness, and implement programs designed to promote this area. The exceptional educational value in the Atchafalaya in illustrating and interpreting our natural and cultural themes, including river systems, bottomland and swamp ecosystems, active delta building processes, water control technology, conservation and preservation, are all things that we talk about on a daily basis here in Louisiana. They're in the news. They're things that we're concerned about as Louisianians as we look into our future, and that provides us a tremendous learning opportunity for young people as well. And the curriculum that has been developed, the themes parallel science, geography, history, math, taught at elementary through high school levels, and thus a curriculum based upon the basin creates a very unique opportunity to impact teaching and learning in Louisiana. I asked Memory to develop this curriculum as part of the 2012 bicentennial commemoration. And the resulting materials were based on research from Tulane University and the University of Rhode Island as part of a National Science Foundation partnership with the Louisiana State Museum System to construct the Katrina Living with Hurricanes exhibition in New Orleans, at the State Museum in New Orleans, which I hope you've had an opportunity to see. Activities were contributed and reviewed by certified science and history educators. This curriculum is composed of 3 manuals, each containing cross-curricular activities for elementary, middle, and high school grades. The accompanying CD introduces educators and students to the basin and serves as a resource for each manual, allowing educators to access the CD and all materials via the Atchafalaya National Heritage Area website. The 3 components to the curriculum, waterways and structures, natural resources, habitat and environment, and history and culture, all feature the components that make the basin a truly unique place in the United States of America. The instructional strategies and classroom activities are based on a topic of discussion today, the National Common Core Standards. So this program meets the Common Core Standards, as well it should. There's an emphasis on encouraging students to play an active role in documenting, investigating, interpreting, and preserving the physical and cultural features of the region. And this entire program is based on the success that we saw with the bicentennial curriculum. And as that curriculum, this program emphasizes providing hands-on materials to educators and students and training the educators to implement the programs. The Atchafalaya Commission funded the printing of educational resources to distribute to elementary, middle, and high schools in the 14 parish area encompassed by the Atchafalaya National Heritage Area. And we continue to seek additional funding to make resources available to every teacher in the state. We're also going to be conducting half-day teacher workshops at no charge to public, private schools and districts and homeschool groups through our educational department and the Atchafalaya Commission. For a nominal fee, school districts can schedule a more intensive program if they are so inclined. We've provided you with a copy of the Atchafalaya educational materials, including the CD, and I would ask you to support and endorse the districts by recognizing the importance of this program and making certain that they're aware that it creates an opportunity to promote a very cherished and important part of Louisiana. And I appreciate the opportunity to make this presentation to you, and congratulate and thank you for the work that you are doing on behalf of the people of Louisiana, and particularly the young people of our state.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I'm certain there will be some comments and questions. Ms. Bradford?
First, I want to move that we do endorse and put our approval on this program. But I also want to thank you, Lieutenant Governor, because you have, in both of your state positions, made it a challenge, I guess, to be sure that our unique history, culture, and heritage is passed on to future generations of our state. And I think that's a great achievement, and I just want you to know that as a teacher, I appreciate it. I want to go back in the classroom and use them. And as an adult who knows the value of it, I thank you.
Thank you.
I second that motion. I want to speak.
We also need to receive,
Yeah.
Ms. Bradford.
Technically, it ought to be a receive and approve.
Receive it.
Okay. And that's the second as
Yes.
well? Okay.
However you need it.
Other comments? Okay, Ms. Bophy.
Well, so I taught 8th grade Louisiana studies, and this is about the hardest week of the year for me because I'm, missing the fact that I'm not going back to school, and this makes it worse. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I would say I'm glad that you have been able to get the resources to make it available to teachers, and would encourage you to focus on teachers who are teaching 8th grade, because there's a really good alignment there. And I think also 3rd grade. So it's 3rd grade and 8th grade have really good alignment. And I want to appreciate, you didn't just say that you aligned to the Common Core State Standards, but I actually found it in the book. And so I get to drive across the Atchafalaya on my way here, and it's such a beautiful drive. And I'm thinking everybody else should be jealous of you in the time you get to serve as Lieutenant Governor, because you get the bicentennial, you're doing such a great job with this, you'll have the Battle of New Orleans, but then the truth is this is Louisiana, so almost any year we can find a reason, right, to celebrate our culture and our history. So thank you for taking your job so seriously, and I appreciate all the work that you and your staff have put into this.
Thank you.
I want to thank you as well. I mean, any other board member comment? Jay, your passion for our state is always commendable. I've always appreciated it's sincere, your efforts and your love for our state, and I appreciate that. And you're coming before our board more than once with programs to reach out to our students with that passion is very admirable. You know, we have a great state, and a lot of fascinating things to learn about our state. And I'm going to plug your other thing because I like it so much, the Pick Your Passion program that you're running as well. It's important for our students as well, which is an opportunity that you provide through your office that if you want to travel and know our state better, that through a website that you provide, you can go on and learn the different things that are available for free for the most part to the public. So this looks like a great program. I'm assuming, is there any objection to receiving and endorsing?
Mr. Chairman, can I just make one quick comment? I apologize. I also want to say thank you. You spent a number of years serving the state in a lot of different capacities, and your track record is tremendous, and I appreciate everything you've done. I think the second part about this is, you know, as we talk about standards and comparing nationally and making sure we're making gains in all the numerous ways, there's still a strong role for curriculum and content that is unique to Louisiana, that is developed and taught and trained locally. And I think this is a great example that we should never lose sight on while we're taking all these strong steps to be a national leader in education and everything we do. There's still a tremendous role for local content, for local unique curriculum, and nothing we've done here is going to stop opportunities like this. So I appreciate you bringing this as a perfect example of the type of things we should be looking for. So.
Yeah, but thank you. And with Memory's ability to continue producing great content like this, we're going to keep looking for ways to make certain that we're promoting Louisiana substantive content in the educational arena.
Well, we appreciate it. Once again, you taking time to be here. It looks like a wonderful program. Very excited about it, and hearing no objection, it's received and approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, board members, and thanks again to the Lieutenant Governor and his staff. I know y'all put a great deal of work into this. It looks tremendous. I look forward to looking at the DVD myself. So, again, thank you. Next item, please.
Do you want to?
Oh, I'm sorry, I did. We do have two personal privilege moments. I would like to recognize Ms. Hill first, if you're prepared, and then we'll go to Ms. Beebe. Thank you.
You want me to take a picture?
Good morning. I'm here today to recognize one of my districts that I've worked closely with throughout the 2 years that I've been a BESE member, which is East Baton Rouge Parish School District. And I'm here to recognize them for the great achievement that they have accomplished throughout the 2 years that I've been on as a board member. And I wrote a speech because I really want you guys to know how grateful I am for your hard work and dedication towards our students. It's with great gratitude and honor to recognize East Baton Rouge Parish School District on their accomplishments for the 2012-2013 school year. As one of the BESE representatives of EBR School District, I'm proud to say that I represent you, your district. On behalf of the entire BESE District 8, I would like to commend the EBR school board members, superintendent, and most importantly, the students, teachers, and parents. Your ability to lead and to meet the standards, the rigorous standards of the state has been truly impressive, and the accomplishments that you guys have made throughout the 2 years that I've been a BESE rep, I want to thank you. And as I move on, today it's an honor to recognize those principals who have, which really touch me as a board member because I advocate so strongly for our children. I advocate for them to have a quality education. And in spite of what others may think, in spite of what others may say, I know that you guys are working hard to make sure that our children receive a quality education. And as I call your school name, I would like for you to stand to be recognized. There were 12 schools that increased performance scores and that are now currently out of AUS status, meaning these schools were deemed academically unacceptable. However, due to the fact that their test scores have increased, these schools are no longer under that status. So I would like for you guys to give them a round of applause for that. And the 12 schools are 2 high schools. Please stand if you're here. Bel Air High School, Glen Oaks High School. Okay. All right. 3 middle schools, Broadmoor Middle, Capitol Middle, Park Forest Middle. 7 elementary schools, Capitol Elementary, Howard Park, Inspire, Melrose, Marydale, and Park, and Winborn. Please, you guys, let's give these principals a round of applause. Now I'd like to recognize Superintendent Bernard Taylor. I met Superintendent Taylor maybe a year ago. And when I met him, we were in a meeting, and my spirit allowed me to know that he had a heart for children and to do the right thing. And even though he's not a resident of Louisiana, he have came from Detroit to come to Louisiana to make a difference for our children. And so, Superintendent Taylor, I want to recognize you for your hard work, your dedication, and may you please come forward as I present you with a certificate. And it reads, Certificate of Achievement to Dr. Bernard Taylor, Superintendent of EBR School Board. I recognize you for providing leadership that enables EBR to rank 3rd of the 10 districts in the state that have increased the number of college-eligible students, as well as 12 schools from being academically unacceptable status in 2011 to 2012 school year to academically acceptable status for 2012-2013 school year. I present you with this token of appreciation.
If you would like Dr. Taylor to say a few words, you're more than welcome to say so.
Good morning. I am deeply honored and very touched by this, but I certainly feel that this is earned and warranted by those individuals who stood, by the teachers they represent, by the students they serve and teach so well, and by the parents and community that entrust their children to us. It's hard to accept individual recognition for a job that I really enjoy doing. So I'm very, very touched and humbled by this. But I think what's more important to me is that in recognizing the work of the district, you really do recognize the work of the children, their teachers, their administrators, everyone who supports them, and their parents. So thank you for this, but more importantly, thank you for recognizing that our students are working and our teachers are working very, very hard to meet the very rigorous standards that you set, and we are not afraid to take those on. The Common Core, we're getting ready for it. So whatever comes our way, we're going to meet the challenge, but we're going to do it in a way that sometimes people might not necessarily understand. But know this, East Baton Rouge Parish is serious about providing a quality education for every student who we have the privilege to serve. And as long as I'm superintendent, we're going to continue to do that, because at the end of the day, if we don't do right by these children, then we don't do right by the community in which they live, and we don't do right by the state in which we're privileged to be. And I am a resident of Louisiana. I have the taxes to prove it. So it's a pleasure for me to be here, and I am grateful to Representative Hill, who on the first day of school was bright and early with me at Glen Oaks High School. So we had a great morning. And thank you all for the privilege to be here. President Romer, Superintendent White, board members, thank you for this recognition of our district. And to the people who I get to work with, thank you so much for just setting the stage for the great work that's going on every day in our classrooms. Thank you all so much.
I would like the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board members to join me, please. And as they move forward, I would just like to say I've had the opportunity to participate in several meetings, and it's been very knowledgeable and very informative for me on the state level, going to the district level, and to listen to some of the challenges that they are faced with on a day-to-day basis. But I would like to recognize each and every one of you, because you guys make a difference. You set the policies for our children. You work hard for our children. And the policies that you set impact our children. So I want to thank you for your hard work on the board and doing a great job. But I have a certificate of appreciation for the board as a whole, and it reads, East Baton Rouge Parish School District, I recognize you for ranking 3rd of the district for the students that has increased academically on the ACT standards, and for removing 12 schools from academically unacceptable status in 2011-2012 school years to academically acceptable status for 2012-2013 school year. And I want you to know that it's because of you guys. It's because each and every one of you that cares for our community and our students. That's why we're here today. So thank you so much. Keep working hard, could continue to work together, because without you, our schools and our community would have not made a difference. So thank you so much.
If one of the members, if any member would like to make a comment.
Well, on behalf of the entire school system and my fellow board members that are here and the ones that aren't here, thank you very much for the recognition of this what we consider to be tremendous accomplishment. But I have to really echo Ms. Hill's words, and that is that this goes to the teachers, it goes to the principals, it goes to the parents, and it goes to the kids. That's how we're going to build a stronger community. That's how we're going to really save a generation of children and provide the kind of educational impact that we need to as a district. I really appreciate your involvement in our district. I know you're there at the meetings all the time, God bless you, and I know you're there in our schools, and I really appreciate the work that you do. I thank you so much, and again, on behalf of the board, I want to say thank you, and thank you all for the work that you do in working with us. Thanks a lot.
Mr. Romer, if I'm in order, I'd like to make a few comments. I want to congratulate you, East Baton Rouge School Board members, and your team. And I realize that it takes a team approach, but this is what we have to do in traditional education. We have to market success, and we have to bring to light that we are making the gains that are needed. Just trust in us, public. We can do it with the support, so I applaud you. Keep up the great work. And thank you, Ms. Hill, for bringing this to our attention. And Superintendent Taylor, I didn't mention you by name, but congratulations to you. I know you're proud.
And I am very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hill, for arranging that. We don't take enough time. We get in a hurry and to recognize people, so I appreciate you doing that. Ms. Beebe, I believe you had a personal privilege as well.
Thank you, Mr. Romer. I will need a member of BESE staff. Unfortunately, the person I want to recognize today is unable to be here because she's at UL at Lafayette registering. She's registering for her classes fall semester. And, oftentimes, there are those who will say that members of this board, particularly me, members of traditional systems, are part of the status quo. We reject, or we're resistant to change. But I will say that I am elated to be here as a superintendent of St. Martin Parish School System, where there is the opportunity for students to be a part of the traditional system, as well as having choice opportunities. In the St. Martin Parish School System, as Mr. White often alludes to, there is a virtual learning program. Fortunately for the young lady that I have pictured on the screen, last board meeting we recognized her. She's Jacqueline Fett, age 16. She was enrolled at Breaux Bridge High School. She was also a part-time worker for a fast food chain. And this tells me that success comes to those who desire it. Those students wanting success, they have to be committed. They have to desire it. This young lady, and I'm so excited that she has a desire to attend college. She is going to work towards the completion of a biology degree. She has aspirations to become to enter the medical profession. She wants to be a doctor. Again, age 16, and she made these accomplishments through her participation in traditional courses as well as the virtual learning. It's a blended model, and again, I am for responsible reform. This is responsible reform, and I'm not against all reform initiatives. However, I want to stress within this system, within the St. Martin Parish School System, there is an accountability component. Students enroll in our virtual learning. There are teachers hired. They facilitate the assessments of coursework. And I just think it's a wonderful opportunity for our superintendents of traditional systems. If you haven't thought about the virtual program in this sense, please consider it. And again, I won't delay. I just wish Jacqueline could have been here today. Her parents are Eric Fett, and the mother is Loretta Degater. But I am presenting her the certificate of recognition with the BESE seal because of her outstanding accomplishment. Again, showing, age 16, completed the 27 Carnegie units, not skipping a beat. Today she's at UL registering for courses. So I applaud her, and I just wanted you as BESE members to be aware that we did recognize her within the St. Martin Parish School System, and I have been meeting with students within the school system. I've been speaking to high school students. I've been celebrating Jacqueline's success, and I've been encouraging students to take advantage of the program afforded to them, where there is a waiver of seat time. And I talk about work ethics and encourage them to pursue the advantages offered to them. So for those who say I am an anti-education reformer, this is evidence that I support programs such as these in place, where there is an accountability component. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Beebe, and we wish she could have been here as well to hear that. That was an excellent report, and we appreciate you highlighting that the advantage she took of the opportunities you provide her. So we appreciate that. Does any other board member have a comment? Mr. Wagerspack.
Mr. President, not to go too much longer, but I think my mom would slap me in the back of the head if I didn't say this real quick. And so I should have recognized yesterday, but Patrice Pugel is here. She's leading the Superintendent Association. I've known Patrice a long time. Going to work with her on the MFP task force. I know she does a fantastic job. Smarts, toughness, leadership, everything wrapped up in her role there. And so I just wanted to say welcome to BESE. Look forward to working with you this year. And thanks for everything you do in Ascension. So.
Thank you. Any further comments? Again, Dr. Beebe, we appreciate that presentation and the work you're doing. Let's move to the next item.
The next item is board and committee report, or board committee reports. Item 5.1, academic goals and instructional improvement committee. Ms. Bofi?
On behalf of the Academic Goals and Instructional Improvement Committee, I move to approve motions 1 through 9, noting that motions 7, 8, and 9 are notices of intent.
There's a motion, is there a second? There's a second by Mr. Gill. Is there any objection? Hearing none, so moved. Next item.
The next item is item 5.2, Administration and Finance Committee. Mr. Gio?
On behalf of the Administration and Finance Committee, I move to approve motions 1 through 39 and 49 through 51, pulling motion 40 and noting that motion 45 is a notice of intent.
Second.
There's a motion and there's a second by Ms. Orange-Jones. Is there any objection to that motion? And I believe you hear no objection. Those items are approved, and you pulled item
40.
40.
I believe, Ms. Jones, did you request that item to be pulled?
I did.
On the...
I did. I believe it was school turnaround, innovation turnaround, or is it?
It's this committee.
It's this one? Yes, I would like to pull that item. And
If we could just clarify the item.
in this book.
It's on page 17 behind 5.2, item 40, I believe, and I'll read it. It says, on motion of Mr. Romer, seconded by Mr. Wagasback, the Administration and Finance Committee recommends that the board authorize, and then it has the, I suppose y'all want me to read the bullets. Is everyone following where we are?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It has to do with the Public Benefit Corporation.
That's correct.
Ms. Orange-Jones.
And so I want to leave that motion as it is. I want to add another motion.
You would like to amend the motion?
I would like to, no, it's actually not an amending. It's a separate
It's a
motion.
separate, okay.
Yeah,
Related to this item.
related to this item, so we have to pull it, and then I'd like to add a separate motion.
So do you want to make that motion now?
Yes, I would love to. I wanted to make a motion that our board directs the Recovery School District to appear before the East New Orleans Neighborhood Advisory Commission before the formation of any final policy, decision, or guidelines with respect to architectural plans and designs for the Bundy Road facility.
A second.
There's a motion and there's a second by Ms. Bradford. Question? Mr. Garvey.
Yes. Is this intended to apply to interior architectural designs? Because my understanding is that most of the work is going to be done inside the building to renovate it, not on the outside.
Actually, I think it could have to do with interior designs. I just think that that I'd like to see the RSD work in partnership with this particular advisory commission to determine the actual architectural process.
And when you're dealing with a renovation, there's probably a ton of redesign, and are you asking that every time there's a redesign that
No, I'm not.
RSD reappear?
No, absolutely not. I do think there is likely an initial meeting that can happen between the RSD and this commission to, before we formulate the policy or decision. I just want to direct the RSD to actually follow up with that particular commission and then come back and then report back to the
And then unless there's a significant redesign, that they would not need to come back for a simple redesign?
Well, I
and
don't
appear
know
again.
exactly what, I don't know enough, this is outside of the purview of, I can't tell the distinction between simple design versus complex design. What I'd really like to see happen is I just think our board should direct the RSD to be able to go in front of this commission and report back to us on that.
Okay, I'm getting an indication that the RSD is okay with this and is not going to cause too much
No,
problems.
this is not meant to delay unintentionally or anything like that. I just think there are many stakeholder groups in that area that could be of very useful consideration in this process to us.
Any other comments or questions? We actually need to, this is a new motion, so we need to take care of this motion and come back to item 40, action and approve it as well. Was that a question, Ms. Bradford? Or you? No, so we have a motion. I believe we have a second. Ms. Beebe.
So could someone clarify what this, you said advisory board?
There is a New Orleans Neighborhood Advisory Commission
Okay.
that are very vested stakeholders in that part of the city. that I want to ensure the RSD has the opportunity to actually meet with and consult with before we as a board make any final decisions.
Yeah, and I strongly concur with that recommendation.
Ms. Wu?
Yes, Ms. Hill.
I would just like to say, as far as the representative of New Orleans, I'd like to thank you for making sure that the community and the community leaders are engaged in this process. And so I strongly support your motion.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Wags, do you have any last second comment you'd like to make again, or are you?
I just think Kira does a great job every day, so it doesn't surprise me this motion's come up.
Is there any objection to the motion? Do we need the motion reread? Is everybody good? Any objection? Hear no objection, so moved. Now, I would like a motion from Mr. Gio to approve item 40 if possible.
I move that item 40 on the Admin and Finance Committee is approved.
I second.
And there's a second. Is there any objection to that motion? Hearing none, so moved. Next item.
The next item is 5.3, the 8G public hearing. Ms. Bofi? Will you receive the minutes, please? So moved.
There's been a request to receive, a passion plea to receive the minutes. I think there's been a second. Is there any objection to receiving the minutes? Hearing none, so moved. Next item.
The next item is item 5.4, the Educator Effectiveness Committee. Ms. Orange-Jones?
On behalf of the Educator Effectiveness Committee, I move to approve motions 1 to 8.
There's a motion, and there is a second by Ms. Bradford. Is there any objection or question? Hearing none, so moved. Next item.
The next item is item 5.5, the School Innovation and Turnaround Committee. Mr. Garvey?
Yes, on behalf of the School Innovation and Turnaround Committee, I'd like to recommend approval of items 1 through 24, noting that items 23 and 24 are notices of intent.
There is a motion, and there's a second by Ms. Bradford. Is there any objection? Hearing none, so moved. Next item.
The next item is item 6.1, the 8G Advisory Council report, and the motion would be to receive the minutes and approve the tentative agenda.
So moved.
So there's a motion to receive the minutes. There's a second by Ms. Bradford. Is there any question or objection to receiving the minutes? Hearing none, so moved. Next item.
The next item is item 7.1, consideration of approving new faculty, course offerings, and textbooks for fiscal year 2013 to 2014 for the Louisiana School for Math, Science, and the Arts. You'll find this behind tab 7.1.
So moved. Motion by Mr. Lee, seconded by Ms. Bofi to approve. Does anyone have a question? Is there any objection? Hearing none, so moved. Next item.
The next item is item 7.3, consideration of executive session relative to litigation concerning St. John the Baptist Parish School Board versus State of Louisiana et al., 19th Judicial District Court, docket number C622693, section 24.
Thank you. Prior to going into executive session, the President asked for a motion to go into executive discussion, litigation concerning the St. John the Baptist Parish School Board. Could I have such a motion? The motion by Ms. Gill, second by Ms. Beebe. The board will ask for a roll call motion to go into executive session. It does require a 2/3 vote of members to go into session.
Yes, sir. Dr. Beebe?
Yes.
Dr. Beebe votes yes. Ms. Bofi?
Yes.
Ms. Bofi votes yes. Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Ms. Bradford votes yes. Mr. Garvey?
Yes.
Mr. Garvey votes yes. Mr. Gio?
Yes.
Mr. Gio votes yes. Ms. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Hill votes yes. Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Lee votes yes. Dr. Moranti?
Yes.
Dr. Moranti votes yes. Ms. Orange-Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Orange-Jones votes yes. Mr. Wegisbach?
Yes.
Mr. Wegisbach votes yes. Mr. Romer, do you care to vote?
Yes.
Mr. Romer votes yes.
I will remind the public that no votes will be taken in executive session, and we will return shortly. Thank you. Just receive. Yeah. Just receive information. We just received information. Board members, I do need a motion to reconvene into regular session. Mr. Garvey?
So moved.
Seconded by Mr. Wagasback. Do we need a roll call vote to reconvene?
No, sir.
Is there any objection to reconvening into regular session? Hearing none, so moved. I would suggest we just receive the information.
Well, we don't have to do a motion
We don't
at
have to do
all.
anything?
There's
Okay.
no action to be taken.
Okay, so next item,
The
please.
next item is item 7.4, consideration of a discussion on Common Core and In Bloom.
And why don't we wait till the superintendent comes in, and we will proceed at that point. We do have a number of speakers today on this item, but why don't we first have a little discussion, then I will invite speakers to come forward. I will remind speakers to try to keep to 3 minutes if you can. And, okay. And why don't, Ms. Beebe, if it's your item, if you'd like to make a motion to receive the discussion, just so we're in order. There's a motion to receive the discussion. There's a second by Mrs. Bradford. And why don't we restate quickly, now the superintendent's in, the item.
So this is consideration of a discussion on Common Core and In Bloom.
Ms. Beebe, would you like to begin? Or?
Yes, sir. I'd just like to offer clarification stating the rationale for placing it on the agenda. In fact, I've had some constituents communicate concerns, and I know that within school systems we have an obligation to fulfill the Common Core requirements. So I want all of you to know that the discussion I have had within my school system is that, you know, we are going to be compliant with state mandates, and we're doing our due diligence to implement Common Core. The major concern I have as the superintendent of a school district is due to the most recent news article where Governor Bobby Jindal was quoted as saying that he opposes a federally mandated curriculum, and there have been discussions within the St. Martin Parish school system and beyond regarding those statements. And in fact, I will go a step further to say the article also stated that Governor Jindal would have a conversation with his BESE appointees. So I think this is creating somewhat of a concern moving forward, because I do know that the educators I've had the privilege of working with, they have gone through various teacher evaluation programs, and the common saying is, this too shall pass. So my reason this morning is to have Superintendent White address his position, or to reiterate his position and BESE's position on the implementation of Common Core, because as I say, you know, there's even been there were news articles regarding the PARC assessment, and after we move away from LEAP and ILEAP, you know, what are the assessments to be used? And there was even a mention that we're not certain if PARC is the assessment that will be used. So I am asking Superintendent White to state our position as we move forward. And also the concern for In Bloom is I have had constituents, students for that matter, reach out to me requesting, and I'm sure that you have been copied, but requesting that their personal data, the information, and we've all had the discussion about what would be stored in the In Bloom data system. So I need I'm asking Superintendent White to clarify the process. When we receive these emails, is there communication back to these individuals indicating what is going to happen with the request? And indeed, I also recall a news article stating that Superintendent White said that Louisiana is distancing itself from in bloom participation, and there was also mention of a task force or committee to address those concerns regarding the in bloom storage. So I think this is an opportunity for Superintendent White as we move forward to let the public know, because there are many people with concerns. So that was the purpose of adding this to the agenda.
Great. Well, I really appreciate it. I, at an April meeting, shared that our state will not be participating in the In Bloom initiative. I communicated that to In Bloom. At a later meeting, some members of the audience requested that I communicate that in a certified letter rather than just in a regular letter, so I did that. We have no data in Bloom. On the question of the Common Core, our position is that our kids can compete with any kids in America and should be given the right to, and so we're going to continue our raising of expectations to adopt the same basic expectations for reading, writing, and math that other states have done. We are part of the PARC Consortium, which we will be measuring that. But as I said today, we shouldn't do that as we raise the bar in a way that punishes any of the educators or the students involved. And so you as a board will be asked to adopt policy in December for elementary and middle schools, and in January for high schools, that ensures that evaluation, promotion, and graduation accountabilities are very gradual and are ensure that no one is unnecessarily hurt as we raise the bar. I want to thank you for giving me the chance to articulate that.
And I will give every member, I'm going to recognize Ms. Bophy. I'll give members another chance. We do have a couple comment cards. I thought we'll do comments, and then if there's additional questions or comments, then each board member will be recognized. And I'm going to call them out. Patrice Peugeot. And Mike Falk, if you would like to, Superintendent Falk, Superintendent Peugeot, I should say, Scott Richard, if you all would like to come down, you're welcome, or you're certainly welcome to wave your...
I've encouraged our chairman to fill up the seat so we can go from one to the next.
I just want to say that...
Would you mind? I know you, and everyone else does know you. Just state your name for the record, please.
Sure. Patrice Peugeot, Superintendent of Schools in Ascension Parish and President of the State Superintendents Association. I just want to go on record that it is indeed imperative that our students have the opportunity to accept the challenge of Common Core as we think about the fact that in today's global economy, our kids have to compete not just here in Louisiana, not even just across our nation, but across the entire world. And if our kids are going to be competitive, then they have got to have the same reading, writing, and mathematics standards that are common across our country, and indeed these have been normed across the world. And so I think that is imperative. Having said that, there are some concerns among superintendents about being technologically ready for the assessments, and I know that the state has been trying to work and help districts prepare for the assessments. However, a lot of districts are still not technologically ready to do those assessments online, and that is a grave concern for superintendents across the state. Also, I just want to echo what Superintendent White has said, that as we move into the Common Core and expect more rigorous standards in the mastery of those standards from our children, we have to be sure that we are smart in our transitions and that we do some comparative analyses and assure that we raise that bar in terms of students passing from one grade to the next, the kinds of standards, the kinds of grades we give schools, the kinds of ratings we give teachers, that we raise that bar gradually such that people have time and appropriate resources to meet the new standards. I don't have one doubt whatsoever about our kids, our teachers, our leaders' ability to meet the standards. given the appropriate resources and time. But do know that the technological resources are indeed a grave concern for superintendents across the state.
Thank you. Mr. Gill.
Superintendent Peugeot, I'm curious, on the technology side, what percentage of the districts are ready?
I don't know the answer to that. Superintendent White probably does.
I'd be happy to. We're actually releasing a report next week. And so because that release, the data are not yet final, I don't want to share the exact results, but I can tell you that the results are very positive. At the same time, I will also tell you that I've communicated to Superintendent Peugeot and Superintendent Falk, and I believe to Mr. Richard, but I'm going to check my memory on this, that I believe there is more that our state can do, and I look forward to joining in advocacy with the School Board Association and the Superintendent Association for steps that we believe policymakers can take to avail our schools of the resources that they need.
Even in districts that are ready, having gone through the pilot last spring for the more rigorous assessments we're going to have, some of which those were done online in the elementary school. We were one of the first districts that were said to be ready, but it took a lot of person power to reposition technology and schedule it out such that all of the kids could have the right instrument in their hands at the right time.
Sure.
So, there's a lot that goes with a transition to online assessment that districts have to be prepared for.
Thanks so much for your comments.
Sure.
Mr. Garvey?
Yes, I had a question for the superintendent.
Which one?
The big one, the one up here, but you can stay if you'd like. You might have a comment. Do you know roughly how much this move to the Common Core technology is going to cost on average per student? And I'm talking about, wondering about costs that would not be otherwise incurred. There are some costs, I think, in moving to Common Core that would be incurred anyway, new textbooks and stuff like that, that would replace old textbooks anyway, but the new costs.
Well, to be honest, Mr. Garvey, I'm reticent to say that there are any new costs beyond those that should be expected. Now, that's not to say that there aren't real costs to districts in buying technology. There are. And by the way, I want to commend the two districts in front of us. They have, and the taxpayers of those districts, they have made their schools technology rich, not for the sake of a test, but because it's the right thing to do in the 21st century. And that's really what I would suggest we focus on. Please know that every year in our state we spend $50 million on paper textbooks. $50 million on paper textbooks. That's $100 per child. Now, a tablet only costs $200, $250. A tablet is updatable on a minute-to-minute basis in terms of updating textbooks, in terms of teachers being able to download lessons. Teachers don't plan anymore on just the binders that we used to open. They plan on laptop computers. They deliver their instruction through smart boards. And I think we have to be real that we are still, in many instances, spending money in an old school way. And second, that technology is not a matter of one test on one day. Technology is just a matter of day-to-day life. We need to be honest that in too many cases today, the only hours of the day that our kids spend not completely connected to the internet are the times when they're asleep and the times when they're in school. And that needs to change, irrespective of whether there's an assessment. So I guess I want to resist the idea that there are technology costs that are associated with the test that go beyond those that should be associated with day-to-day life. Second, if I could just brief you on what the standard is for the test. The minimum standard is a 7-to-1 ratio in terms of student to computer, and the operating system expectation is Windows 7. Windows 7 was introduced nearly 10 years ago. And a 7-to-1 student to computer ratio is something that anyone on this board is vastly inferior to what we would expect of our workplaces and probably in many cases our home lives. So I say all of that to highlight for you, not to diminish remotely what Superintendent Peugeot said, which is right. There is a concern. But it's a concern in light of the fact that we educators, and I was a part of it too, only 15 years ago I was writing lessons by hand. we are behind relative to other industries. And that's not anyone's fault, but we are a little behind and we're catching up. And so the concern is totally legitimate, but let's not lose sight of the fact that whether it's the legal world, the construction world, the hospital world, they are ahead of us right now in purchasing technology, and we're catching up.
Thank you.
Comment on that. I was surprised to learn that some of the districts, some of the school districts in my BESE district didn't have a 7-to-1 or 1-to-7 ratio of computers to students already. And I was surprised to hear that moving to that ratio, which I would have expected, was being blamed on Common Core. The cost of moving to that was being blamed on Common Core, and I didn't think it was the proper place to place the blame. So I agree largely with what you said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Hill, and I'll work my way down.
Okay. I have a question and a concern. My question is that the board, we're gearing to move away from textbooks to computers, correct?
I think, superintendents they're closer to the action than any one of us, but other than Dr. Beebe, but I think teachers are making that choice, and I think parents are making that choice on their own. There are innovative districts like the 1-to-1, and by the way, I just want to continue. What's going on in Ascension on technology, and I don't want to speak for you, but it's not, I've talked to the teachers, it's not being done because of a test, it's being done because it's the right thing to do. They have pilots of schools that are literally going 1-to-1. Now, I think the taxpayers have been very generous, and I think we have visionary leadership. But that wouldn't happen if the teachers weren't saying this is something that we want to work with. And so I think, frankly, it's not this board or me, it's the teachers that are really leading this.
Okay, well, I guess my concern would be because I represent rural parishes in very impoverished areas, that if we do adopt that concept, that we also look into those districts and those parishes that are not equipped in reference to internet resources, even our children, because even though we as individuals are able to have their resources, there are many children out there that don't have their resources, are not able to go home and have computers or have internet. And so I think that's something that we need to make sure that we think about as we move forward. And like, for example, Ascension Parish, they're very fortunate because they have a strong tax base. And so, our expectations of them are much greater. But when you look at an area like St. Helena, which is very impoverished, and their tax base is not as great as Ascension, those are the challenges. And when I think about those children, I don't want them to be left behind, but I want to make sure that they have the resources to keep up and to do as well as the students in Ascension Parish as well.
That's a great
I've
point.
got, just so everybody knows, Ms. Bradford, Ms. Beebe, then Ms. Bophy.
I'm going to wait till after the public comment. I'm sorry.
Okay. Ms. Bradford?
Yes, and I guess I'm piggybacking a little bit with what Ms. Hill said. Now, I agree, we have to have technology for all students. I believe we are moving to away from paper textbooks. But if I'm hearing you right, and if I know the constituents that I hear from, that the situation is not so much future or need or for technology, but it's like right now, what are we going to do? How are we going to hold those districts accountable who simply cannot arrange for this technology for this time? I mean, I guess that is one of my questions.
Sure.
But also, because I'm going to turn it over to you, I want to put a plug in for the old technology grants that we used to have. I don't know if they were AGs. I don't know if it was state dollars. I don't know exactly where the funds came from. Was it AG? But we could apply for wonderful technology grants, and that was how a lot of schools did improve their infrastructure at that time. So just put a plug in for that. I'll turn it to you.
Sure. Our technology surveys, and by the way, I want to echo, I think Ms. Hill's concerns are very valid, and it has, in my view, again, not much to do with these tests. It's about what children deserve and not forsaking the rural environments. The challenge in a rural environment today is actually has nothing to do with whether or not they can get computers sent to their doorstep. They can do that. It's really a question of the broadband. And, we're not strangers to this issue in our state. This is something that we need to solve. I believe that working with the School Board Association and Mr. Richard, working with the Superintendent's Association and Superintendent Peugeot and Superintendent Falk, we will solve this issue. I believe there are steps that policymakers can take. We're already seeing tremendous progress. There'll be a study released next week that will indicate every 6 months we do this report. We started a year ago with only 2 districts in the state, one of which was Ascension, fully ready to implement. We are in a different universe from where we were a year ago on this question. So districts are making the changes necessary. But I do believe that there are steps we can take as a state in the area of broadband that will allow our kids to have access to what they deserve. Every child deserves a computer and an internet accessible computer.
Members, we do have a few other speakers. I'll give you the opportunity to speak now if you wish, or we can listen and then speak. Ms. Beebe, it's totally up to you.
While it's fresh
Sure.
up here, okay. We also want to point out to Superintendent White, I think President Obama with E-rate, I think there are some policy changes coming down from the federal level, but piggybacking what, or concurring with Ms. Hill and Ms. Bradford, with regard to the impoverished districts, and I don't think it is it's just not those impoverished districts, it's those districts that are lacking the support of taxpayers, and I think we have an obligation, and I appreciate the fact that you mentioned, Superintendent White, that, you know, the success, those districts who are capable, it is attributed to taxpayer support. And I can think of one neighboring district, you know, they've had bond proposals submitted to the public and opposition to that. So again, I feel we have to appeal to the taxpayers. You know, if we're wanting to hold our traditional systems accountable, then we need to support those things that are critical to student success. I will also add that in the St. Martin Parish school system, I'm grateful to the taxpayers for their support, but we have allocated $4.4 million to infrastructure to put us where we need to be regarding the assessments, the park assessments. So it is going to be greatly challenging to many school systems, and you know, I think we need to be proactive in ways in which we can assist those school systems that don't have the means to meet those requirements. That's my point.
Mr. Wagersback.
I would just want to point out, I think, in light of this conversation, it's very relevant that yesterday we spent a lot of time talking about an MFP task force and what are some of the issues that task force is going to address. And, you know, to me, we spend about $3.5 billion every year on the MFP, and we need to make sure we're doing it the right way that's going to produce results for the kids and empower the teachers to do the job they need to do. I don't know all the answers. I think the task force is going to spend a lot of manpower and womanpower trying to make sure we find that solution. And so, but I think what's relevant here, I mean, one of the first orders for that task force is going to be not just what's the long-term solution, how we get the formula right, but also we've got some near-term dollars. How best do we spend them? The legislature this year put like what, a $68 million in addition to the formula that's not really figured out how to be spent. I think technology, I think teacher compensation, whatever the important issues are, we need to talk near term in that task force to say, hey, look, there's some extra dollars here. Is this a good use of these to help districts on some of these technology upgrades? Are there other uses? I don't know the answer, but I think we've got to sit at the table and figure out, we've got extra money in the formula right now that we've got to figure out the best way to spend. So before we start saying, let's go get more tax dollars, I would urge us to at least take the time to go through this task force and say, are we spending this $3.5 billion correctly today, or is there other ways to spend it? And also, this extra $68 million that was added, how best do we use that maybe to address at least partially some of this need we're seeing on technology? So I think it's very relevant to the task force we talked about yesterday.
Mr. Falk, and I'll come back to board members again. Mr. Falk, then Mr. Richard, and then Dr. Myers.
Michael Falk, Superintendent of Schools in Central. The shift to the Common Core causes a refocus, a realignment. And what many districts are doing and have done already is begun to prepare the teachers through in-service, through professional development. And what we have done the last 2 years is we have taken the summers, we have worked with our teachers K through 12 in preparing for the shift to Common Core. That's the biggest question that we've had, not test scores, but the transition to Common Core and the preparation for the teachers to be able to meet the requirements of the new evaluation system. Until you raise the level of expectations that you have for students and for teachers, you're not going to raise the level of performance. By increasing the rigor, by increasing or changing teaching techniques to where you have more critical thinking, where you have student engagement, where you have cooperative learning, that's when the shift will come, and your students will be able to compete with any other students because they'll be able to think and perform at the higher levels. With the Park assessment, we were one of the pilot projects. At first, we were not viewed as having the necessary infrastructure, but once they reevaluated it, they saw that we did have the things in lines, and we were able to test our students' grades 3 through 8 on the pilot. What are we doing with that? We're analyzing where our students are right now and what we need to do to get them at a higher level. So we're taking those results from the pilot, we're using it, sharing it with the teachers, and we're changing the things that we're doing in the classroom so that our students will be better able to meet the requirements of whatever test is given to them. E-rate is an opportunity for many districts that have a large number of students on free and reduced lunch to look at the broadband, the capacity internally. That's going to be the big issue. Ms. Peugeot has a real good one-to-one iPad. We just initiated that with our 6th graders. What I'd like to do is I'd like to have a 4-year grade span, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and then 9, 10, 11, 12, and implement that at once, because we've analyzed it, and those iPads are good for about 4 years, and then they become outdated. So you get the high school students to have one all the 4 years they're in high school, and then you get those elementary students all the way through middle school, and then you open them up at the high school. So you have a continuation and you have a development of students and teachers in keeping up with the technology and using it to change instruction and to change learning.
Appreciate your comments.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ms.
If I
Jones.
just might, before, I just wanted to respond to your comments. I just want to let you know how much I appreciated your remarks, your passion, your clarity. I just appreciate, there's nothing left to say after you've just said that, so I don't even want to do anything to change that. But really, I just want to thank you for your leadership and your commitment to this.
Thank you. Also want to go ahead and ask Keith Chatelaine to come down, and he'll be given an opportunity as well. Mr. Richard.
Thank you, President Romer. Scott Richard, Louisiana School Boards Association. Thank you for all the commentary this morning regarding this issue. It is a moving target, and it is an infrastructure problem in our state that's much bigger than BESE, much bigger than school boards, much bigger than superintendents. And I just wanted to pledge to you all as stakeholders that the School Boards Association stands ready to work cooperatively, because we will need the political capacity of every elected and appointed BESE board member, the state superintendent, all the various stakeholder groups, lobby, cable, PAR, Stand for Children. I think this is one of the areas that we can all come to the table in total agreement that it is the right thing to do. We need to move our state forward, and fully funding technology integration throughout all of our schools and school districts, not only with devices, but with the infrastructure, the bandwidth, the networking capabilities of school districts that doesn't exist as we speak. Those are all priorities that we need to take into account, especially in regards to the MFP task force and other funding sources that may be available out there from other entities besides government entities. And it also raises the level of awareness that we have to have the discussion about security. The In Bloom issue, if anything, raised the level of awareness of many folks that there has to be a discussion as any entity in private business or public government entities move into the technology age, technology security with precious student information that shouldn't be shared across the airwaves needs to be a part of technology plans. And it's an area that school boards, superintendents across the state need to take very seriously in regards to the viability and the importance of a long-term and short-term technology plan that often gets overlooked with all the other issues that are occurring as we transition and try to reform our public education model in Louisiana. And with that, I'll be quiet and just want to reiterate that I would hope this is one issue that all of us can come together on and move our state forward with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richard. Dr. Myers?
Yes, my name is Elizabeth Myers. I am an educational historian researcher. I'm a parent and a grandparent of children in public schools in Livingston Parish. And I come to you in two capacities. One is a researcher over a decade on national and international education reform, and the other one is as an active member of my community, often in and out of clubs and speaking with local community members. I want to bring to you their concerns. So these are not just mine. These are the phone calls I'm getting because they know I come up here often to essentially study you and what you do to make public policy, which is essentially my expertise is in the area of public policy. A couple of things I want to address as a researcher is this discussion about global competitiveness as being the rationale for Common Core. Declinist literature has been around since the late 1800s on U.S. declining economy, and first it was the Germans, and then it was Japan, and then others. First of all, U.S. economy remains number one in the world at $16 trillion. The closest second is China at $18 billion. According to the World Economic Forum, U.S. ranks fifth in productivity. One of the reasons we have dropped in their ranking of productivity, and there are a number of reasons, but the one that stuck out to me that I see more often is the continued criticism of public and private institutions by business community. Another is the idea that we don't rank well in international tests. And if you look at the test straight on, yes, we fall in the lower echelons relative. But a Stanford study, which Mr. White often quotes their studies, in a Stanford study, they controlled for social class, and when they did, it bumped up to 12 rankings, bringing us more towards the top 10 at about 12 or 13 when you control for that. In contrast to that, of the 35 developed countries that were done in another report, United States, as a developed country with a $16 trillion budget, ranks 34th out of 35th in child well-being, with 1 out of 5 children being in poverty in this country. The other thing is that's given to me, and I hear a lot, is that we need STEM workers, that we need more people to fill STEM jobs, that there's just not enough STEM workers. Research is coming out that there is a particular program by the federal government that has actually impacted STEM workers in this country, and that's the H-1B visa program, which right now is being debated in the U.S. Congress to be doubled. What that does is it allows foreign workers to come in and, quote, replace American workers if they don't meet the requirement of the company, essentially at lower cost. What is happening and what they're finding is that American children or American students, when they go to college, are less likely to enter into the STEM programs, not because they're not able to, but because of the fact that there's simply no jobs.
Dr. Myers, if you mind, could you direct
Yes,
it
sir.
related
I thought
to
you would like this
how it
information,
relates
sir.
to
That relates to,
the
because
Common
it's a
Core,
definite
I suppose?
rationale. It is a continual rationale right here in Baton Rouge when you had that meeting with the corporations that came. This was a number one rationale, including national security. I am trying to say that there are other factors going on than just whether or not we are globally competitive. I will move on from that and go to the constituent concerns. One of the concerns brought to me is how the Common Core was developed. There are numerous videos. There are numerous things that you can look at, so I will just get to the point of what a lot of the constituents are concerned with. Number one is that this was developed by two private trade organizations out of Washington, D.C., with heavily funded by the Gates Foundation. Another is that the assessments are being developed under the auspice of the federal government. There are plenty of documents to support that. That is concerning a lot of people because they're saying that ultimately, what I hear is, oh, well, it's just standards. It's not, it's not the curriculum. Well, essentially, this is Bill Gates' quote directly from the 2009 Conference of State Legislatures. Identifying common standards is just the starting point. We'll know if this effort has succeeded when the curriculum and the tests are aligned to these standards. When the tests are aligned to the common standards, the curriculum will line up as well. For the first time, there will be a large uniform base of customers. His quote can be looked at online during that meeting. This is something verifiable.
And if I just
one more, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
They asked me to bring this to you.
Sure.
I'm trying to do this. The two things that are concerning them besides that is the In Bloom, and then there is another grant that they have gotten wind of that we have not heard in this BESE meeting. I come often. You see me often. And I haven't heard anything about it, and yet I have the grant number from the Federal Labor Department. Essentially, it's called the Workforce Data Quality Initiative, and according to a report, LDOE is part of that, as well as several other agencies in Louisiana are a part of this database. Not only am I concerned about that because I have a special needs child and I don't need his information in a workforce database that could affect his future, but these parents are concerned about their information getting in, not only into In Bloom, but ultimately finding its way to this workforce initiative. Those are the concerns, big concerns. There's more, but those are the big concerns being brought to me by the people that I speak with in my community. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. It'll be Keith Chatelaine, then Wayne Free, and then Catherine Gopplet. Sorry about that.
Mr. Romer.
Yes.
I would ask Ms. Beth, or actually Ms. Beth has brought up this workforce initiative, and I would ask, and she's indicated that the LDOE is a part of that initiative. So, Superintendent White, is this an accurate statement?
It's not, but it's not entirely inaccurate. We have, it is a grant that's been awarded to many states' workforce commissions, and I'm sure you don't disagree with that. We have a workforce commission that is building a database to try to organize the information as to who's in the workforce, and they have asked the federal government's financial assistance. I have not spoken with Mr. Isink, who runs the workforce commission, about it. But they ask us then for information as to who went to school where and other, just names of students and so on that have graduated from schools so that they have an accurate database. We have agreements with other state agencies to share information about which schools we have, who's in the schools, and so on. I'm happy to provide the board a report of this or anything else, but it's out of the Workforce Commission. They have with the Department of Labor at the federal level, they have an agreement, and I think she's referring to, not inaccurately, that we have a data sharing agreement with them as we do with other agencies. Let me give another example. Child and Family Services. They run all of the, they license child care centers, for example. Well, we need to have information as to who's in their child care centers, and we have a data sharing agreement with them. Health and hospitals, they run Head Start. They oversee the regulation on Head Start. We have to have some ability to communicate with them about these things too. So I'm happy to provide the board a report, but it's not an initiative we're involved in. It's that we have an agreement with that agency and the Workforce Commission as we do with others. It's the Workforce Commission's grant. It's out of the Department of Labor.
Okay, but so I'm assuming that it would be the student's identity, the name, social security number, the school from which that student graduated.
I'm happy to provide the board a report with all information that we share with any other state agency. But it's important when you do need to understand where are kids going when they graduate from our high schools, who is coming into our kindergartens. We for better or for worse, other agencies oversee those things, and we need to work with them to share information. And that's, I believe, what the doctor is referencing. I'm not saying she's wrong. but it is not an initiative we're involved in. It's a workforce commission initiative, and she's right that we do have a information sharing agreement with many state agencies.
Well, could you provide that report for the next meeting, please?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chatelain.
Keith Chatelain, Great Enrollment's Tea Party. In December 2011, the Federal Department of Education released 58 pages of proposed changes to FERPA law without congressional approval. Now, the Department of Education believes these changes adopted in this final regulation provide clarification on many and important issues that have arisen over time with regards to the FERPA applies to the SLDS and to other requests for data on student progress. These changes were adopted in January 2012. One, to remove the requirement for the parental consent before personally identifiable student information is released. And number two, to change the definition of who can receive student data. Rather than to very limited list of need to know, the student information now to be released to anyone who's involved in education, research, and the workforce. Now, I know Mr. White mentioned the fact that he had signed a letter to get us out of Emblem. Well, the thing is, we had sent out a Freedom of Information Act to get this. We haven't received it yet. So I appreciate if possibly I could give you a card and you could send us a copy of that. And my other point of view was that how can we assure our children privacy information protected according to FERPA law when the law has changed? And that's it. Thank you.
I appreciate your points. I will mention that, in fact, I believe it was at the last board meeting, it may have been previous, that we take your concerns very seriously, as does the superintendent, and all the BESE members have expressed the same concern. And in fact, we're working to try to form a kind of a blue ribbon, I may not be articulating it exactly right, a group that would say what are the best practices to ensure privacy. So your concerns are well placed, and we do take them seriously, and certainly through the report that the superintendent gives us and over the next few months, hopefully we'll hear more and more definition of how Louisiana is going to make sure we take care of Louisiana interests. So.
And I understand, no disrespect, because I'm going to give this card to Ms. White, please forgive me, a copy of that. But last time I came here, months and months ago, and I brought up about Emblem, and I was told, it's great, you know, nothing wrong with this, nothing to see here. Within less than a week, we're out of it. So you can see my concerns, why it's hard to trust when when I'm hearing one thing, if we reverse roles,
sure. And
that was, you wouldn't trust me totally.
Sure. And that's why we appreciate your comments. We do take them seriously, and sometimes after comments, we go back and reflect and review and make adjustments. So we appreciate your comments.
Thank you. And if you don't mind, I'll give you a card.
Actually, Bridget, can you take the gentleman's card, and then we'll send you we've responded to dozens of information requests on this, that with a copy of the letter, we're happy to provide you a copy of the letter. Thank you for your comments.
Wayne Free, and then Catherine. Say it again, please. Last name. Go ahead, Wayne.
Wayne Free, Louisiana Association of Educators, and for Barbara Freiberg's. I didn't come prepared to speak to this issue. I didn't know it was going to be an agenda, and I'm not dressed the way I normally would. I'd like to start with something that I think will be very positive. This is probably my last presentation to the BESE board. After 10 years of being here, it's time for me to spend more time with my family and grandchildren. And there's an excellent chance that within the next couple of months, I'll be leaving the state. It's been a powerful place to be. I'll never forget calling Peggy one day from a school south of Houma. And she said, "Now, where are you?" And I said, "I'm about an hour and a half south of Nolens." And she said, "There's nothing an hour and a half south of New Orleans." And I said, "Well, actually, there is." And in my process, I've worked all across the state, and I've seen a lot of wonderful things and a lot of negatives. In terms of the Common Core, there's a lot of strength there. and a lot of good things there. And there are a lot of negatives, just like there are in any curriculum. If you put too much emphasis on focusing on certain kinds of reading, you're going to have problems. If you put emphasis on this or that, you're always going to have strengths and weaknesses. It's not any different from all the other curriculums we've worked with over time. They always make some kind of movement and so on. The biggest weakness is how we use the assessment process, and that's going to be critical. Because in every assessment I've ever worked with, and I've worked with many throughout the process, when you use them inappropriately, it narrows the curriculum and it hurts the instructional process. I have never forgotten a time when I had people come to me, parent come to me and say, Wayne, when will teachers learn that their job is to teach kids what they need in life, not how to take a test? Too much emphasis on ACT, end of course, PARC, or any other one hurts the overall performance. The technology issue was spoken to wisely, but there are some things about that you need to keep in mind. I noticed during that process that at least half the people in the audience were using their smartphones and their pads and not paying attention to anything that was going on here. Having engaged myself in technology all of the time, having kids with iPads in the classroom does not necessarily mean they're engaged in learning what it is they need to be learning. And we need to keep that in mind as we think about the technology process. Much of what I see in my grandkids and technology has nothing to do with improving them over time. And how we engage with it is going to be critical. There are some things that you need to realize that are also critical about the decisions you make. One is Louisiana, while one of the poorest states in the country, has the highest percentage of kids in private and parochial schools anywhere around. When you take out 15+% of the kids who are from the families with the highest income, your overall scores at the state level drop dramatically. It is not about what you're doing in the public schools. It's about the best kids not being there because their parents have the ability to pull them out. The number one predictor in performance in every state in this country is poverty. And that is one of the issues you deal with in this state.
Mr. Free,
and all of those, I will get there very quickly.
I've reminded a few other speakers, and I want to remind you, if you could wrap it up, that'd be great. And I'd hate for our last interaction not to include me cutting you off. So,
you know, I understand that, and I had hoped to be out here an hour ago. That's true for y'all too. The greatest weakness, the two greatest weaknesses of this current education reform process, nationwide, it's the inappropriate use of assessments in ways that do not inform and grow the process that are used to measure. And you're going to fight that in the committees that you've established. And they need to look very clearly at that. Because no matter how you grade the schools, you will have problems in the process. And the second greatest issue in Louisiana is the lack of trust in this state between educators and this board and this department. And no matter what you do with Compass or anything else, unless you can change that process, well, we'll be going 2 years from now into something else. And that would be a shame. I appreciate the time.
I appreciate, Mr. Free. I did not know of your plans. You and I have not seen eye to eye on every issue, but we've had a cordial relationship, and I appreciate it, and I certainly appreciate your time. I appreciate anybody's time, but in particular, since this may be your last, I hope it's not your last, but it may be, we appreciate the time you do put in. Thank you very much. Catherine.
Yes, my name is Catherine Guppold. I'm a resident of Ascension Parish. I'm an educator myself. Thank you, President Romer, Superintendent White, and board members. I think all of us sitting in this room have a true interest in the future of our state, which is the children. And we all want education to be a very important part of that future, to prepare them. I don't question anyone's motives or their intent, and I hope you won't feel the same toward me. First of all, we do have some privacy concerns. They've been addressed. I think you would do well to check out the changes that have been made recently in the FERPA law, and they do allow not just educational institutions, but private companies who may be doing testing or providing technology to use the data of the individual students. This is a concern. Second, the cost. I was a little bit taken back by Superintendent White's comment about not being able to say anything about costs. The cost of implementing Common Core will be increased for the state of Louisiana and the nation and each individual school district. I appreciate Ms. Hill, yes, making her comments about areas that have less of a revenue base, because that is a real concern, and we need to look at that. One of the words that we talk about a lot in Common Core is rigor. And we have placed rigor into the standards, and I do not have a problem with standards. We have always had standards in this state, and we need to raise those standards as much as possible to increase the outcomes, to improve the outcomes for our children. But one thing that we're lacking in the standards is we cannot increase the rigor in the students. This is a big problem now we're having as we try to implement Common Core. The basic attitudes that come with the child or the student as they enter into the educational process do affect how they approach the learning. Thirdly, the loss of local control. And this is a debate. I'm glad that you're letting us speak. This is good. We need to increase our communication. But if you look at the documents, primary source documents, secondary source documents, and now we're starting to see some public discourse about Common Core in the newspapers from our governor and other officials. We are actually abdicating control of the curriculum in our state to the federal government. And I have a great concern about this. The public school, if they take on the Common Core, presently private schools and homeschool students are not required to have Common Core. But if the GED, the ACT, and the SAT are all aligned with Common Core, then they will be at a disadvantage when they enter into these processes to enter into college-ready environments. And I think as we all sit in this room in America and we love our country, we love the fact that we stand for freedom and liberty, that we need to also agree to give each other choices. Choices not just in what car we drive or what house we live in, but choices in education. And I believe Common Core is going to take that choice out of the hands of parents, teachers, local administrators, and put it in the hands of the federal government. I do not believe this is what we want. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate being able to speak. Thank you.
I appreciate your comments.
Mr. President, may I make a comment in response?
Superintendent White.
While I don't agree with everything that the speaker just said, I do want to emphasize for the board, just so you have my personal view on this, that I believe your comments about the federal role in education are by and large accurate. The federal government is overly prescriptive regarding how administrators should spend money. The federal bureaucrats oftentimes interfere in the lives of not just the state agencies, but also the 14,000 school boards across the country. They manage a completely large and cumbersome bureaucracy. Every one of our school boards is littered with staff whose jobs are to be solely implement federal mandates, in spite of the fact that the federal government only accounts for 8% of education spending. I also believe that the state government has been overly burdensome on local actors and overly determinative of curriculum decisions. We have operated a paternalistic textbook approval process that requires a bunch of bureaucrats in Baton Rouge to approve the textbooks that locals should be making decisions about. We recently had a statewide curriculum that got down to the lesson to prescribe lesson planning strategies for teachers, in spite of the fact that we have 50,000 different teachers. And so I want you to know that I essentially agree with the principle that we need to get back to parent control and educator control of how students are educated. The one area in which I do disagree is that, and I can tell you that that's why Louisiana has gone further than any state in the country in terms of making flexible federal dollars so that local educators can use them, in terms of simplifying the federal monitoring process so we have one cycle of monitoring rather than 27 different cycles of federal monitoring, which we used to have. It's also why we have ended the idea that educators need to take the bureaucrats' word for it around textbooks, and it's why we've ended the comprehensive curriculum and have moved toward educator and parent tools. It's also, by the way, why we've expanded choice for families beyond what any state has been able to offer in terms of choices of public, charter public, or non-public schools, as well as course choice. I will say, though, that from a teacher's perspective, the great enemy in all of this has always been being asked to cover 100 different standards that someday some state board member or federal board member decided they were just going to add to the other list. You walk through, and every day, you know, we all know who have taught, you have to justify what you're going to teach with some decimal number, 6.3-4, that some bureaucrat somewhere decided is what you call something that you're supposed to teach, oftentimes even though you know it's not important. And I have to question myself. I've taught in states where forever automatopoeia, for example, as an English teacher, was a standard that I had to teach. Every year we spent a week learning automatopoeia. As I reflect on it, by the way, I don't know if anybody even here remembers what automatopoeia is. As I reflect on it,
let's don't put him to that kind of challenge.
That level of rigor I'm not ready for. As I reflected on it, really the reason I did that is because some state bureaucrat told me to. Not because it's really important for kids in the end to learn that relative learning to read, write, and do math at a basic standard level. I believe that these standards not only insist that our kids can compete, but they make teachers' lives easier by focusing on the things that matter and then giving teachers choice and parents choice as to how the kids get there. So I want you to see that while I completely agree with about 95% of what you said, the one area in which I disagree is I actually think that simplifying the standards to just focus on basics, slimming them down by cutting them in about a half, and just talking about skills rather than all these things that some federal or state bureaucrat told you as a teacher you had to do, is actually a step in the direction of local control, not removing local control. We may disagree on that, but that's my philosophy, and that's part of why I think this is an important thing for our state. Thank you, Mr. President.
I appreciate your comments. I know we have a couple more. I'm going to ask, I'm going to put you on the spot, Superintendent Pujo. Your district, perhaps more than any other, and I know Mr. Falk has done an excellent job as well, have been working with your teachers on this concept for more than just the last week. Can you give us some, and just briefly, I don't want it to be long, your experience thus far and the acceptance and what you think it does or does not do for your district, positively or negatively for that matter?
Well, we've been working toward this from the first draft of the Common Core that came out. And basically what Common Core does in ELA with reading and writing is it requires that kids read more complex text, and instead of writing about the what they did over the summer, that indeed they are analyzing those complex texts and having to write analytically towards what those texts are saying. And so in that regard, it is indeed, I think, exactly what kids need to do in order to be competitive, no matter what field that they're going to go into. In terms of mathematics, it requires that students have a much deeper understanding of mathematics than we have had before. It has an equal balance of procedural, how do we do the problem, with deep conceptual understanding of why that works and why we do the problem. I don't know how we could argue that that's exactly what our students need to be learning and doing. That being said, it does take some preparation and some time for teachers to kind of rethink about how do I restructure my classroom such that instead of focusing on a million different facts that kids regurgitate, that I really am more conceptual in my approach. And that's really kind of how we're approaching Common Core and working with our teachers in that regard. And so far, we have had good success. When I talk with kindergarten, first and second grade teachers who have been most immediately impacted by the implementation of Common Core, they tell me it's the hardest work they've done in their lives, but that our kids are reading and writing at unprecedented levels. And so when teachers tell me that, I can only be hopeful that as we move up and take more and more full implementation across all grades, that we'll get similar results.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I want to thank all the presenters. I mean, you bring up very important issues that we need to make sure we're focused on and make sure that Louisiana controls Louisiana. And but we're able to compete globally. And I know Ms. Bophy had asked to speak, and then if anybody else, we'll go from there.
Well, thank you. Did Mr. Freed leave already? I wanted to thank him for telling us that he wasn't planning on being back, because it's hard for me when our advocates come and then they disappear. So I appreciate that. If you could pass that along for me, Ms. Moe, I would appreciate it. And then I want to tell the superintendent that I appreciate him for assuring us that In Bloom does not have any of our students' data, and instead of forwarding those emails in to get responses, I'll just be able to tell constituents that In Bloom does not have any of our students' data. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was the Common Core, and I think it's really important. One, I appreciate Dr. Beebe wanting to bring this up, especially as a superintendent of a school district, and she might read a certain article in the paper where her district has spent a lot of time and her educators have worked really hard on this issue. And so I appreciate her wanting to be able to clarify our position on this, because I know that our teachers have worked really hard. And so I just think it's real important for us to emphasize that what our state has adopted, and this echoes what the superintendent said, is the Common Core state standards. And so I'm going to go even farther than the governor and say it's not just that I don't want a federal curriculum, and I would not be supportive of a federal curriculum, but I don't think we should have a state curriculum either. And I really don't think there should be a district curriculum. I have spent a lot of years, my degrees are in curriculum and instruction, and I believe that the best curriculum comes when you have the children in the room, you know what their needs are, you know what their interests and their aspirations are, you have their parents as partners, and you have other educators in your school. And when you can really pull all of those factors together, you can create a magical curriculum. And so I don't want a federal curriculum. I will not support one. I have told the superintendent I don't want a state curriculum, although I do appreciate the resources that the department has made available for our teachers, because our teachers are looking for resources relative to the Common Core. And I'm very optimistic about the opportunities available for our children, and I have to tell you personally, my child is in his first day of public school. He's the first day of first grade. And he actually started kindergarten when the standards were having full implementation. And as a parent and an educator, that is very exciting for me. I knew that his teachers were not handed a curriculum and expected to read a script. And that is something that I think is really important for him and his learning and his future. And so I am watching this real carefully. And I heard something somewhere that a teacher said, and I almost tweeted it, but I didn't really want to start any kind of fires. And basically the teacher said, someone that I just truly respect, she said, the changes in the standards as far as educators go will either refresh teachers or they will flush them out. Because we are asking so much of our teachers as far as the standards are concerned. When we gave them the comprehensive curriculum, it changed what they had to do. Now that they have the Common Core state standards, the expectations are higher for the students. The expectations are also higher for the teachers in what they are delivering to students on a daily basis. And so, you know, I hope that we refresh as many people as possible. And I know that I know it's a really hard time. And even when I think about the international tests, you know, and I think about poverty, I think about the fact that a number of our students are in private schools. If we were the best system in the world, according to anyone's standards, it doesn't matter who they are, but if we were the best system in the world, we still wouldn't be good enough for our kids. This is such important work that we have to continuously improve over time. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Moranky?
I just wanted to say that as a first-year board member, I am so grateful for this discussion and this dialogue. It was almost like a given, you know, that we had to have this. And I can't really speak for all of the non-public school systems, but I can strongly speak for the Catholic diocesan systems that have embraced the core and have been very much involved in seeing all of the preparations and teacher workshops preparing for this transition. So it's an exciting thing, and like you said, it is going to refresh them. It already has. So I'm grateful for that. Another comment that was made, and I'm so, I guess, heartened to hear that all of the districts are assessing their capacity and making sure that when those gates are opened for this transition, that they will have in place what's really needed. Because I do think that our state is moving in the right direction.
Thank you, and I believe that concludes our business. Now, we do have a motion to receive. Oh.
One quick thing.
Yeah.
I have learned on the board that there's a lot of hard work that goes into preparing for these meetings. And I want to personally thank Ms. Cope and her staff for the work that they do in the preparation. I think that they've come in and within a short period of time as a new executive director have really made some great strides in even moving their service to a higher level, and I publicly want to appreciate that.
Mr. Chair.
I'm going to go to Ms. Jones,
That's
and Orange Jones, and come back to you, Ms.
You might
Buffy.
be thinking the same thing, but Mr. Freeze come back, and I just wanted to say thank you for your contributions and your critical contribution to this statewide discussion on education, your commitment to the children across the state. As someone who's in my second year on this board, I really have come to expect your perspective and your contributions to what I know will be a very important discussion that we'll have in this room that will ultimately impact, you know, hundreds of thousands of children and families, and I just want to thank you personally for everything that you've contributed.
Ms. Buffy.
Yes, I wanted to echo Mr. Guillau's remarks about the preparation that it takes for the meetings, and the staff has done such a great job. And I also just want to thank Ms. Cope, because we can be kind of hard to wrangle, especially when it came to things like our strategic plan, and I know we've been working a lot on 8G, and so to put up with a bunch of people that fly in a lot of different spheres must take a lot of patience, so I appreciate that. And then also for us to be coming out with such good products as a result of it. So we have a great team, and I'm very excited and appreciative of all you guys do.
And I would add only that we've learned things we can do better as well, but we've made significant improvement. So I appreciate everyone's effort. There is a motion that we need to receive. I'm assuming there's no objection to that motion. Hearing none, that concludes our business. Move for adjournment. Thank you.